Welcome to BK Academy of Chess. The two knights defense is a chess opening that begins with the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6. First recorded by Polerio in the late 16th century, this line of the Italian game was extensively developed in the 19th century. Black's third move is a more aggressive defense than the Gioco Piano, which would result from bishop c5. In fact, David Bronstein suggested that the term defense does not fit, and that the name Chigorin counterattack would be more appropriate. The two knights has been adopted as black by many aggressive players including Mikhail Chigorin and Paul Keres and world champions Mikhail Tal and Boris Spassky. The theory of this opening has been explored extensively in correspondence chess. Knight g5. This attack on f7 practically wins a pawn by force. Despite Tarash's criticism, many players consider knight g5 White's best chance for an advantage, and it has been played by world champions Wilhelm Steinitz, Bobby Fischer, Anatoly Karpov, Garry Kasparov, and Viswanathan Anand. Czech problemist Karel Traxler played bishop c5. In Rheinische Traxler, Prague 1896. This bold move ignores White's attack on f7 and leads to wild play where a number of long variations have been analyzed to a draw by perpetual check. White can play d4, knight takes f7, or bishop takes f7. After d4, d5, White's best is to go into an equal endgame after d takes c5, d takes c4, queen takes d8. Other sixth moves have scored very badly for a White. The usual move used to be knight takes f7. But this is very complicated after bishop takes f2. The current main lines all are thought to lead to drawn or equal positions, for example after king takes f2, knight takes e4, king g1, or even king e3. In the year 2000, this last move, which was already considered by Traxler himself, was credited as the refutation of the Traxler variation after an article in the New in Chess Yearbook series, featuring a cover diagram after White's seventh move. However, computer analysis subsequently showed that Black can probably force a draw after this move as well. White's best try for an advantage is probably bishop takes f7, king e7, bishop b3. As this poses Black the most problems, although bishop d5 was the move recommended by Lawrence Trent in his recent Fettstrainer DVD. No grandmasters have regularly adopted the Wilkes bar as Black, but Alexander Beliavsky and Alexei Shirov have played it occasionally even in top competition. No clear refutation is known. More common is d5 e takes d5. The recapture knight takes d5 is very risky. Albert Pincus tried to bolster this move with analysis in 1933 and 1934 issues of Chess Review, but White gets a strong attack with either the safe Lolly variation d4, or the sacrificial fried liver, or Fagatello, attack knight takes f7, king takes f7, queen f3, king e6, knight c3. These variations are usually considered too difficult for Black to defend over the board, but they are sometimes used in correspondence play. Lawrence Trent describes knight takes d5 as a well-known bad move, or words to that effect. Instead, Black usually chooses to make the opening a gambit by playing knight a5, knight d4, or b5. After knight a5, Paul Morphy would play to hold the gambit pawn with d3. The Morphy variation, or Kieseritsky attack, has not been popular, since it has long been known that Black obtains good chances for the pawn with h6, knight f3, e4, queen e2, knight takes c4, d takes c4, bishop c5. Bronstein once tried the piece sacrifice d takes e4 with success, but its soundness is doubtful. Instead, White usually plays bishop b5. When play almost always continues c6, d takes c6, b takes c6, bishop e2, h6. The move queen f3, popular in the 19th century and revived by Efim Bogolyubov in the 20th, is still played occasionally, but Black obtains a strong attack after either h6 or rook b8. White then has a choice of retreats for the knight. The usual move here is knight f3, after which Black obtains some initiative after e4, knight e5, bishop d6. This is considered to be the main line of the two knights' defense. Steinitz favored knight h3. Instead, although it did not bring him success in his famous 1891 cable match against Chigorin, Steinitz's variation was mostly forgotten until Fischer revived it in the 1960s. Nigel Short led a second revival of knight h3 in the 1990s, and today it is thought to be about equal in strength to the more common knight f3. In addition to the moves bishop e2 and queen f3, the move bishop d3 is a valid alternative that has apparently become quite fashionable or trendy in recent years. Also note that after knight a5, bishop b5, the reply bishop d7 by black is a valid idea that has been explored. Black's alternatives to knight a5, the Fretz variation knight b4, and Ulvested's variation b5, are related as they share a common sub-variation. American master Olaf Ulvested introduced b5 in a 1921 article in Chess Review. White has only one good reply. Bishop takes b5, queen takes d5, bishop takes c6, queen takes c6, and d takes c6, b takes c4, knight c3. The strongest move is considered the surprising bishop f1, protecting g2. So white can answer queen takes d5 with knight c3. Black's best response is to transpose to the Fretz variation with knight b4, making another advantage of bishop f1 apparent. The bishop is not attacked as it would be if white had played bishop e2. German master Alexander Fritz suggested knight b4. In 1907 Fritz himself wrote an article about his move in the Swedish journal Tidskrift for Schack. White's best reply is c3. When the game often continues b5, bishop f1, knight takes d5, knight e4, or h4. The attempt to defend the pawn with knight c3 does not work well since black can take the pawn anyway and use a fork trick to regain the piece. Knight c3, knight takes e4, d5. The trap bishop takes f7 does not help, as black has the bishop pair and a better position after king takes f7. Knight takes e4, d5. Instead, knight c3 is usually played with the intent to gambit the e-pawn with the Boden, Kieseritsky gambit. Knight c3, knight takes e4, castle. This gambit is not commonly seen in tournament play as it is not well regarded by opening theory, but it can offer white good practical chances, especially in blitz chess. The quiet move d3 transposes into the Gioco Pianissimo if black responds bishop c5. But there are also independent variations after bishop e7 or h6. White tries to avoid the tactical battles that are common in other lines of the two knights and to enter a more positional game. The resulting positions take on some characteristics of the Ruy-Lopez if white plays c3 and retreats the bishop to c2 via bishop c4 to b3 to c2. This move became popular in the 1980s and has been used by John Nunn and others. Black can confound white's attempt to avoid tactical play with d5. This move is rarely played as opening theory does not approve, but Jan Pinsky suggests that it is better than is commonly believed. White can choose to develop rapidly with d4. E takes d4. Castle. Now black can equalize simply by eliminating white's last center pawn with knight takes e4, after which white regains the material with rook e1. d5. Bishop takes d5. Queen takes d5, knight c3, but black has a comfortable position after queen a5, or queen h5, or obtain good chances with the complex Max Lang attack after bishop c5, e5, d5. The extensively analyzed Max Lang can also arise from the Gioco Piano or Scotch game. White can choose to avoid these lines by playing e5, a line often adopted by Sveshnikov. After e5, either knight e4 or knight g4 is a playable reply, but most common and natural is d5. Bishop b5, knight e4, knight takes d4, bishop c5, with sharp play. And there you have it, the two knights defense. Thanks for tuning into BK Academy of Chess, where together we build, and over the board we even the score.